the background really to the New World Kirkpatrick model is that quite a few years ago, or around 10 years ago now, Jim Kirkpatrick and Wendy Kirkpatrick identified that it was no longer good enough to just evaluate how people found the training and what they learned. And it was no longer good enough to be an order taker. In fact, what they were finding that really training was becoming on trial, and that learning and development professionals really needed to reinvent themselves in order to remain relevant. And what that means really is about building partnerships with stakeholders, being a learning and performance consultant, and supporting any learning or training participants on the job, so that what they do on the job, having been trained on something, what they do demonstrates impact on the organization. So in around 2010, Jim and Wendy Kirkpatrick wrote the book, Training on Trial, which articulates these issues in a number of different ways. And at around the same time, they developed the New World Kirkpatrick Model. So in the 1950s, you may be aware that Dr. Don Kirkpatrick wrote a series of papers as part of his PhD, where he identified 4 levels of evaluating training. In 2010, Dr. Jim Kirkpatrick, son of Don Kirkpatrick and Wendy Kirkpatrick, mindful that training was indeed on trial, developed the New World Kirkpatrick Model. And that is what you see on the screen now. Now, this model is not just a model to help you evaluate training. It really is a model that helps you work with business partners and organizational partners to translate training into on-the-job behavior and impact on the organization. So what it really is, it's a learning and performance model. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you through it briefly. I know a number of you have participated in Kirkpatrick programs before. I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you to remember certain bits of the model, but I'll take you through, for everyone's benefit, I will take you through the model now. So at the left-hand side, you will see often where we are most comfortable as learning and development professionals. We're very comfortable at evaluating reaction and evaluating an reaction to any training event, and evaluating to what degree people learned what they were expected to learn. And we put these on top of one another, or Jim and Wendy did when they developed the model, because these are often things we can do at the same time when we're evaluating any training initiative. You'll see towards the center of your screen what we call the kiwi fruit. And what the kiwi fruit does is, it really is, another analogy is, it's the dartboard, it's the bullseye. And in the green kiwi fruit, we have got behavior. And what's the point of training anyone if we don't want to see on-the-job performance and on-the-job behavior happening? And towards the right-hand side, you'll see level 4 results. And level 4 results is not just what results did the training have, it's what impact did the training have on the organization. And when we say impact on the organization, we are really looking at what we call that flag at the top of the mountain, which is, what does the organization exist to do? What is it trying to achieve? Together with some aspect of financial performance as well. Now, before we get to our ultimate level 4 result, we're going to see things along the way that tell us we're on track. And that's the role of leading indicators. Leading indicators are short and medium medium-term indicators that we're on track to achieve our result. Now let's shift back a bit. Behavior. We know that behavior is highly unlikely, the desired behaviors is highly unlikely to happen unless we have a support package in place. Now, Kirkpatrick call these required drivers. And you'll see on the second layer of the kiwi fruit, you will see the elements of what we call required drivers. So we're going to need to monitor whether the behaviors are actually happening. We're going to need to reinforce them. We're going to need to encourage them to happen, and we're going to need to reward them. Now, if we do not do those things, it's highly unlikely you are going to get the behaviors that you want happening on the job. If you don't get the behaviors happening that you need on the job, you are highly unlikely not to get the organizational impact that you're looking for at level 4. And of course, what we know this means is that we are very, we're very dependent on people being able to learn on the job as well. And that's a fundamental part of the way that people learn. So that's an overview of the model. I've heard it said to me a number of times, it's a very elegant model. I'd agree with that. It certainly articulates what needs to happen if you're going to have performance happening that ultimately impacts on the organization. And a critical part of that is going to be the degree to which you monitor whether those behaviors are happening, you monitoring to which those results are happening, and as you monitor and you get intelligence as to what's happening, you adjust in order to get better results. So that's why we've got that monitor and adjust box there. So that really provides you with the context for today. I'm delighted that we have got 4 panelists who have joined us. Our panelists bring a diverse range of experience and industries across the Asia-Pacific region. Joining us from Singapore is CP. Erika is joining us from Australia. Sanyam is joining us from India, and Heather is joining us from New Zealand. Now, interestingly, and hopefully will be of help to you, they are all on different stages of their Kirkpatrick journey. So, Melanie, are we able to see our panelists, please? Great, thank you very much. So we've got a series of questions that we're going to be asking our panelists today. And when we sent out the announcement of this webinar, we had a series of about 4 questions. And we also asked you to come to us with any questions that you want answering. So in terms of those questions, we've tweaked them slightly in that we've included a question on the current COVID environment. So what we're going to do is we're going to hear from, I'm going to invite each of them, I'm going to pose a question, and I'm going to invite each of the panelists to answer the question. We've got 4 of those questions. I imagine that's going to take us around half an hour, but there is opportunity for you to ask any question you wish. Melanie and Mark, my colleagues, will be looking at that in the chat, and towards the end of the session, Melanie and Mark will help me pose those questions to members of the panel. So if you do have any questions, please write those in the chat, and we'll endeavor to get to them. Okay, the session is until 1 hour.
अरे अगर तुम एक ही जगह बैठे रहोगे ना तो ये तुम्हारा मेरा जो ये ना ये तुम्हारा प्लास्टिक है ये तुम्हारा जो अंदर का वाइटिंग है
No,
ना
please mute your line. I'm very sorry. If not, I have to force mute. Please, everyone, mute your line. You're not one of the panelists.
Okay, thank you. So I would encourage all of you, each of you, to write, if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat. Mark and Melanie will be keeping an eye on that, and they'll be helping me so that we can pose those questions to the panelists. So the first question that we're going to ask the panelists, and Heather, I'm going to ask you to respond initially, please, is what have been some of the key successes that you've had with evaluation using the Kirkpatrick model?
Thanks, David. Hi, everybody. I've just got a few talking points as well, so excuse me if I do look down occasionally to refer to those. So actually it was really interesting when I got asked to do this, be part of this group, because I went back and thought through my Kirkpatrick journey, and it's actually been late 2015 when I first did my bronze certification. So it's actually been quite a while for me. And I decided I would just sort of think through, well, you know, how many projects, like key projects, have I used Kirkpatrick for over the last sort of 5 years? And I've actually worked out that there were 12 quite big projects that I've worked on across quite a range of things. So I'm a learning and capability manager, and I'm always working kind of in that people space. So I've worked on mentoring projects, leadership, capability projects, career development, cultural competence, and team culture. And those are the things that I've applied the Kirkpatrick evaluation model to, and it's been really, really helpful. So what I thought would be great is to just maybe talk to you from two different perspectives in terms of my successes, or what I see as the success of using the model. Firstly, on a professional level, and then actually on a personal level as well. So professionally, I think it's actually really helped me to become an influencer in an organization and to really gain some credibility, because prior to using Kirkpatrick, I really struggled in a learning and development role to be seen by the executive and kind of key leaders in the organization. They just wanted training rolled out, but they didn't care about any evaluation or whether it was having an impact. And I think this has really helped me, and I believe it's helped me because it's enabling me to speak the language of the business. So it's helped me to understand what they want and what the desired results are and what their expectations are, and to actually think like them as opposed to expecting them to think like me. And I think another reason it's helped me is it's got me focused on metrics. So rather than just kind of thinking about the usual measures that I might have taken previously to evaluate some training, it's got me thinking business wide and working with even the finance team a lot of the time to understand what metrics are available, and then to kind of figure out which ones would be best for the particular evaluation I'm doing. So yeah, and I guess probably overall, I've achieved a lot of wins because I have been like aligning myself with the business and really being able to sort of communicate and collaborate better, because they see me as a partner rather than someone that just does work for them. Yeah, so that was probably, I guess, on the professional level. And then on the personal level, it was actually like finding the missing piece of a puzzle for me, because I've always been involved in learning. I started my life out as a teacher, and, you know, then I worked my way up through the education system. And, you know, I was really good at planning and implementing and thinking just about that training component and, you know, how effective was it? Were people engaged, and was it relevant, and all of those things. But I knew there was more, and it used to frustrate me that I couldn't actually work out what impact I was having for the organization or for the customer or for the students, you know, whichever way you want to look at it. So I think that's really been a great benefit to me, and I see that as a success. And I guess it's just confirmed for me that actually, if the behaviours are changing, then, you know, the training was effective. But I work in organisations where people come to me every day and they say, oh, we need some training. And it's like, do you? Let's stop and let's have a think about this. So, you know, that's kind of been the thing. So,
brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. You know, and I think, you know, what I take from that, you know, and I think I met you around, I think the first time I met you, Heather, was around on the Silver program. And I remember subsequent to the Silver program, and you were putting together, the Silver is where you basically put together an evaluation report. And subsequent to that, you were compiling your report. And I remember us meeting at Auckland Airport, reviewing your leading indicators. And I remember thinking, gosh, you must find, you know, you being Heather, must find some of this conversation, you know, quite difficult, because I was encouraging you at that stage to go back to the business to find out, as you said, those metrics that were going to be credible to the business, that the work that you were doing was impacting on the business. So great experience. Thank you for sharing that. CP, have we got, CP, you're on the line. Glad that you're able to make it. Hi, good to see you. So what has been some of the key successes with evaluation for you using the Kirkpatrick model, CP?
Yeah, I have a very similar background as Heather. I started my career in teaching and transited into L&D to look at, you know, instead of doing education with kids, I mean with children, I move on to with adults. I did my bronze back in 2010 or 2011. That's quite some time ago, and I had it in DC, and it was with Chien, and it was a huge class of participants at the DC area. What really struck me is that now when I went into L&D as my career transition, working for a government agency here in Singapore, and government agencies here in Singapore, typically they are the biggest spenders in training. So they were very serious into doing measurement, and Kirkpatrick was the first model that I kind of got to know when I transited into that L&D role back in 2008. And I managed to get, use it a few times, but I always start from level 1, because 1, 2, 3, 4, right? There's a sequence to it. And I remember when I did my training with Jim, he told the whole class that we had it wrong. And it was actually, the other way around. Now, not to dive too deep into that. And not to dive too deep into that, because I don't want to, be a spoiler to those who have not done the workshop. To me, that actually transformed my career when I transited into OD. And then, right now I'm in HR management, leading the HR function. And it got me, like what Heather mentioned, right? You no longer just take orders from the business. Oh, if this is what you want, I do it for you. And you don't focus on the activities and to make the activities good. You really focus on the purpose. And you're able to ask them questions such as, what is the reason why you're having this, what you are trying to achieve, and so on, because we have the end in mind. And we want the end in mind to be co-created together with ourselves and the business in the area of people matters. So I would say my experience in Kirkpatrick is really transformational in terms of helping me, not just in the area of doing L&D, but overall as a HR practitioner. I now tend to be able to practice what we call double loop thinking. Right. Instead of just, becoming a solver of problems, we have to take a step back and really define what are the issues, what are the problems, and what purpose are we looking at to even get ourselves to be busy in organizing certain things that we do. In the context of L&D, why do we even want to organize these activities, learning activities, where, we don't even know where we want to go. So that's my personal journey, and I would say that Kirkpatrick really helped me a lot in my career over the past decade or so.
Brilliant, brilliant. And it's interesting hearing you talk about, starting with the end in mind, and the end in mind is what organizational impact are we looking to achieve, rather than starting with, here's the what training do you want? Absolutely. Okay, so thank you for sharing that, CP. We'll hear again from you shortly. Erika, thank you for joining us. Erika's joining us from Queensland in Australia, and Erika has really, I guess, just really started your Kirkpatrick journey, haven't you?
Correct. I only just finished my bronze last week. So I'm the newbie on the block. But not new to learning and development. So I transitioned from a strong operational background to L&D, because it seemed to be that I found my passion in L&D. And what really the program helped me to, I actually also found that missing puzzle, what Heather said, a slightly different way, because a lot of the elements I'm already doing through my work, and I already worked through that on my own. I created the L&D department in the company. So it's created the program. In fact, the program, which is an onboarding program for our implementation consultants, I developed it. So I have to evaluate my own program, which is quite interesting. But what really clicked in for me is not just reinforcing and making a little bit my knowledge take to the next level and be able to implement those, but also, I realized that I always used level 1 to 3, a bit of level 4, because I always been very commercially minded. But I haven't really gone to the true level 4 results within the organization. I think with the completion and the knowledge I gain now and the experience I'm going to gain, putting it in practice will help me to build that relationship with the executive team and deliver that true level 4.
Because you're working for a very commercial, profit-driven organization, aren't you, Erika?
Correct.
Yeah.
Software,
so where you
software implementation, yes.
Yeah. So software implementation. So and with a number of changes that have happened quite recently because of the COVID situation, so you are really needing to be able to demonstrate that you are a business partner to them.
Correct. Absolutely right.
Great. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Sanyam, what are some of the key successes that you've had with evaluation with the Kirkpatrick model?
Thank you, David. Thank you for the question. I will just start by saying that I actually, when I wanted to do the Kirkpatrick certification, my general manager actually forced me into reading a book about Kirkpatrick. I did not want to do it. I had no inclination of wanting to read the entire book, but he made me do it. And I had to sell it to him as to why I wanted to do the Kirkpatrick model. And I remember speaking to Melanie and Shilpa, and they kept telling me, Sanyam, it's a beautiful program. And finally, after I got the go-ahead from my general manager and I did the program, I can tell you I've done more than 5 or 6 programs in my career span of 5 years, specifically in learning and development, and 10 years with the Oberoi Group. This has been by far the best program for me, and this is why. So the Oberoi Group went through a branding project change the first time since 1934. And the Oberoi Group, what do they do? The Oberoi Group of Hotels and Resorts owns around 34 hotels around the world. We've been constantly ranked as best hotels in the world time and again. And
yes, yeah.
I work with them, and my previous experience includes me being in operations, after which I moved into learning and development.
Right. Yeah. So you're working with a global luxury hotel brand.
That's right. That's right. Thank you, David. Thank you. So the Oberoi Group went through a branding project change the first time since 1934. And it was the responsibility of training managers to ensure that everybody was in line with the culture, was in line with the new branding values, and the fact that we basically include revenues coming out from this new branding change. And I think professionally for me, one of the biggest things that worked was that I stopped being an event manager inside the hotel, because everybody would come to me and tell me, Sanyam, we need a training for this because we've had one glitch or one mistake with the guest service. And I would just get tired of doing trainings again and again and again. It's just, how do you say no to someone who has 100% more experience than you in the same hotel?
Yes. Yeah.
It's impossible to say, you know what, hold on. I would, instead of having a 9 to 7 work day, I would probably have a 9 to 9 work day every day. And it was becoming impossible for me to say no. So please excuse me if I look down just like Heather. I've made some notes. So whenever I would also go into different parts of the hotel to basically improve standards, make it better, I was always seen as the policeman with a gun or with like a, sticks, trying to sort of get people to do the right thing. And they would always look at me as a different entity, as someone who's there to point out mistakes and not really add value. Because of Kirkpatrick, we were actually able to generate 32 lakhs rupees only by one project through Kirkpatrick, which we initiated. And that in itself had such a huge impact on the way people thought about learning and development in the hotel, that now they only come to me when they really need to, and they don't basically hound me for everything, and they understand the value that learning and development brings to the table. So I think it's had a huge impact for me. And one more thing I just want to say before I close, what I need to is that, driving online learnings has been a big challenge for at least hoteliers. I don't know about the rest of the industries, but it's very difficult to get people to, train themselves online. After Kirkpatrick, there was a 75% increase in the number of courses that people took and basically did that for themselves, which never happened in the past, because just before the Kirkpatrick model, before people started seeing training in a different light, there was less than 10% engagement. So I think that's been some of the key successes for me.
Fantastic. So, so these people within the hotel group and with your hotel, they're no longer coming to you to ask for training to fix a problem. What are they doing instead so that the problem is fixed?
They actually consult me to understand if they are doing something wrong within their own department and how I can add value there, rather than me having a magic wand of solutions.
Brilliant. Okay. So, and this is where it's similar to what Heather mentioned earlier. It's about you becoming that business partner and when you're building those relationships within the hotel. Sanyam, I'm going to keep with you if you don't mind. Can you just touch on what have been some of the challenges you faced when you've been trying to evaluate a program?
Oh gosh, I don't know where to begin, and I'm sure the people who've done Kirkpatrick, they all had a little bit of smile when I just started speaking, because when I introduced the Kirkpatrick model, the initial reaction was, but this is what we always do. This is what we've been doing. There isn't anything new that you're telling us. And it was so difficult to sell the program to them. But once you basically, so I basically had a meeting with the senior leadership of the hotel. I made them understand the importance of the Kirkpatrick model, shared a couple of case studies with them. The live case study that I did actually for my Kirkpatrick model was something which was inside the hotel, which had a clear connection and a buy-in from all of them, because they could understand and relate to what I'm talking about. And I think one of the biggest challenges was to get everybody on board. Small tip from me, just get your senior leadership on board and everything else just falls into place. I think that was one of the key challenges for me. And the second key challenge that I faced was having a tracking meeting with them to ensure metrics are in line, and we keep modifying and monitoring and tweaking, these leading indicators so that we actually achieve something at the end of our Kirkpatrick journey. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm just thinking there, because those leading indicators give you as they're an indicator, they give you an indication whether you're on track to achieve those results that you need to achieve. And if you don't monitor and then adjust, you're not going to know that you are on track.
Absolutely. So we tried and adjusted and tweaked a few things, and it was just fantastic to see the output. In the first meeting, nothing happened. Second meeting, a little bit of progress. Third meeting, boom, and it was everybody was just on this boat of excitement and enthusiasm, and they were just for it. So I think that
fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Heather, what have some of your challenges been?
Yeah, I think probably mine often I've changed jobs a few times in the last sort of 5 years, but I think it's when the program's already started and then, you know, evaluation needs to be laid over the top of it. I find that a real challenge because it's like going and finding all that missing information. And I guess I've turned it into an opportunity, and I create quite a visual process in doing that now. So I have turned the Kirkpatrick model into sort of like a visual narrative, and I have pieces that I plug in as I have conversations with people and find out, well, what's the business need? You know, what are the results that you're looking for? You know, who are the stakeholders here? Those kinds of things. So that has been a challenge. And I guess the other challenge for me is actually getting the metrics. I mean, it's really strange because I've worked for an IT company, a telecommunications company, and now I'm working for a pathology company, all of whom collect an awful lot of data, but it just sits somewhere in a black hole and never gets used. And so it's really hard to find out, number one, what do they collect? And then number two, which bits will be the best kind of metrics to lay over different leading indicators. So that's the challenge. Yeah.
And I think with those metrics and leading indicators, they have got to be metrics that are credible to the business and not ones necessarily that L&D professionals create, but they are ones that are metrics that are used by senior people in the business to guide the performance of the business.
Yeah. I mean, some of my projects have actually also included third-party providers who are running the training. And, you know, then they're doing some on-the-job support as well. And it's getting the metrics out of those people as well, because they're not interested in evaluating to show impact because no one's ever asked them and they just keep writing the checks. But yeah, been there, seen that, experienced that, Heather. Yeah. CP, what are your thoughts around challenges with evaluation?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges I faced very early on is to even mention Kirkpatrick to the business leaders. I've learned to realize that, and it's just not just based on Kirkpatrick alone, but I think when it comes to a lot of models that we use as a L&D professional or even a HR professional, sometimes I think it's better for us to leave all this so-called jargon out of the conversation.
Good point.
Only when we bring results to them and they see that we're doing something different, and then they say, hey, how do you know what to do with this? You know, what gave you this idea of doing things differently? Now, that's where I will, of course, give credence back to the model itself and mention that, oh, this is the Kirkpatrick, model, and this is what we that I'm actually be using to support the learning of the project. So I think in my space here in Singapore is that I learned to just get the results going, show bite-sized differences or delta, as I call it, to what I can bring to the table. And then when the business are a lot more ready to hear more things, that's where I bring the model in formally with them.
CP, I think that's a really good point you raise. We work with a number of government agencies where they know, the L&D team know that if you put up a new model, the first response from non-L&D people is to challenge the model. So what Kirkpatrick also has beyond the New World Kirkpatrick model is what we call the Kirkpatrick principles. And the Kirkpatrick principles guide how you can work with stakeholders to get the results that are needed, while still using the Kirkpatrick model. But CP, I think you raise a really good point that, sometimes saying, hey, we've got a new model, guys, to use, sets you up for failure because the model will be challenged rather than the approach that you're adopting. Erika, what challenges have you faced?
Oh, she's on mute.
Being the new kid on the block, I guess my first challenge is the challenge with myself, is to change that elevated thinking, to change my terminology and align all the evaluation we currently have and above with the Kirkpatrick model. So actually we're thinking the same to do what Heather mentioned, that I want to put the visuals in front of me and literally just live and breathe every day while I'm redoing the evaluation program. I guess the other challenge is that our program is a 12-week onboarding program, which I'm evaluating, which existed now for a few years. And I started to revamp the whole program. Then I completed the Kirkpatrick program, and now I'm thinking, okay, let's just start from the goal first, which normally in business I do all the time, and work backwards. So that what been mentioned, that I just need to rethink the entire, which is, although a challenge, but it's a challenge nice to have. So I'm really looking forward to see the results in a very different way. And because we are delivering this in 4 different countries, my challenge will be to align that and make sure that everybody is consistent in terms of the delivery of the program, and the evaluation plan, the new one I will be creating, will help me to make that happen.
Brilliant. And are you going to be using that evaluation plan that you mentioned? Is that what you're going to be using to complete your Kirkpatrick certification?
Yes.
Yeah, great. So just so everyone knows, as a result of attending the program, in order to become a Kirkpatrick certified professional, you need to complete a plan on how you will evaluate a training or learning program. So you're not actually doing the evaluation, that's at silver level. At bronze level, it is having the skills and knowledge to put a plan together to evaluate at all 4 levels. So Erika, that's what you're going to be doing shortly as a result of attending the program.
Yes.
Great, thank you. So I'm just having seen some of the questions in the chat, and one from Rajan, I think is an interesting one, which is around any examples of what do you do in a virtual world in relation to evaluation, which is a conversation the group of us had when we were preparing for this webinar. So we have a question, and it's open to all panelists. So please just chip in. I invite all 4 of you to contribute to this. How has Kirkpatrick influenced your approach generally to learning and development in the current, COVID environment that we find ourselves in? So how has Kirkpatrick influenced you? So any of you, Erika, Heather, Sanyam, CP, please just chip in. We'll be pleased to hear from you.
I started my little basics. So we literally, due to COVID, we in 2 countries out of the 4 countries, when COVID hit, we were 100% on-site training delivery for our customers, for our software implementations. Within a week, we had to turn it into online training. Right. Yeah. Now, our part of our assessments for our implementation consultants is on-the-job assessment, which is that totally had to change and now get online. And of course, the result is slightly different because in a on-the-job, face-to-face environment, you assess different elements, and then we have to switch and think, how are we going to do this online? Yeah. So that was the biggest impact there, COVID. We did reduce a lot of costs, which is great in terms of travel costs, but we are still missing some elements, which still working on how's the best way to get through the evaluation. Okay, so that's evaluating particularly learning, level 2 learning? Yes. And of course, what we know is... And behavior as well. Yeah, and behavior. We're not going to get the behaviors we want unless we have that support package of around the behavior. So how are we going to reinforce what is needed? How are we going to encourage what's needed on the job? How are we going to reward it? And fundamentally, that we've actually got to monitor all those elements as well to see whether they're happening or not. Great. Who else would like to speak about the how Kirkpatrick's influenced how you're approaching things currently? Sanyam. Sanyam.
Heather, would you like to go ahead? I can go later.
No, it's fine.
So I think one of the things that I really learned in Kirkpatrick was that not all training programs are supposed to be attributed to the entire Kirkpatrick model, which I think was a brilliant and beautiful learning, because Kirkpatrick, really takes a lot of focus, attention, time, and hence one thing which I realized during the COVID times was that a lot of virtual sessions started with hotels, which never existed in the past. Literally never existed, because we as a chain, as a company, we would always do sessions, in person, a lot of activities, a lot of games, and so on and so forth. But now we had to do trainings online. So I did a small certification on how to teach people online, because I wanted to upskill myself. And then I realized, how do I check whether or not my people are actually engaged? How do I do that? So I went back to Kirkpatrick, which is, I think, my superhero. And I went ahead and I developed a small questionnaire of sorts to evaluate my virtual journey. And I basically call it the learner satisfaction score. So just like in hotels, we have a net promoter score. I kind of developed like a learner satisfaction score. Now, this may be very obvious to certain different industries, but in hotels, training programs are not measured after their delivery as diligently as they should be. And I wanted to specifically check about my online learnings, and it was so enlightening to see how the journey kept on becoming better, only because we got the right feedback by asking the right questions, thanks to Kirkpatrick.
Great. So Kirkpatrick gave you that structure to ask the right questions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think one of the things we know is you don't actually need to ask that many questions if you ask the right questions.
Yeah, just 5 or 6, that's it. Not like a whole page of questionnaires, nothing of that sort. Just like 5 or 6 questions, but you can actually reduce them to 4. It's just me wanting more information. That's it,
Brilliant. Thank you. Heather, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I'd just probably follow on it actually. One of the things with having to go fully virtual, because we're like 27 locations across New Zealand, we were in complete lockdown. So nobody, well, we had staff scientists at work, but you couldn't get to them to do training and things. And I think working out the right questions was really important as well. So I've found that by asking questions around what is, causing you to have success and what are some of the barriers, and coming up with some suggested things and then leaving options for them to also put in their answers. When I use SurveyMonkey, for instance, I've been getting some really good feedback, and then I can run some focus groups and drill down a bit, because it's not, the easiest thing in the world to engage people online, but it's what we have to do. And people are accepting it, and I think actually COVID in a way for us in New Zealand has taken what was a very traditional workforce for us, and actually got them a lot more interested in collaborating online, and it's been good.
Good. Yeah, I think it's it's become one of those tipping points in the way that people approach learning and development, the current situation. Yeah. CP, is there anything you would like to add?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. I'll just echo that. I totally agree that it's not everything we need to go through the four levels. To me, sometimes certain bite-sized learning that we do online could actually be part of a single program. So it's a matter of putting some of these bite-sized revaluation that we have into one single main evaluation. But I guess what wouldn't change is still having the end in mind. Right, having that discipline to always ask ourselves, why are we doing this? Especially with digital training, there's only so much time you have to engage the audience, probably about 45 to 1 hour to get their attention. And if you want to squeeze everything in to that and make it too too packed, you won't get the kind of outcome that you want. So I think to me, it's really it just makes us more disciplined, all right, with all these limited resources and time that we have right now to really select what we want to do with the audience, with our employees when it comes to learning.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm just looking at some of the chat. I know we've got one more question to share, but given that we've talked quite a bit about level 3 behavior, and I'm going to open this to the panelists, and I am putting you on the spot here because this is a question that's come through from chat. Are there any tips or thoughts that you may have on measuring level 3 behavior? So just raise your hand if you'd like to speak. So any tips or thoughts you have on measuring level 3 behavior?
I can start it.
Okay, yeah, Heather, thank you.
Yeah. What I do is, I mean, most organizations seem to have quite a few processes already in place where, you know, managers or team leaders are doing things on a regular basis with people. So, you know, when you're rolling out an initiative and you're looking for particular types of behavior change, I always work with that group of managers or leaders to get them on board and for them to fully understand what the critical behaviors are and actually build them with them. But then also get them to identify the ways that we can be measuring the change as we go. And, you know, like often you'll find that there's regular mentoring sessions, or they'll have one-on-ones, there's performance appraisals, you know, things like that, that you can build in and capture data. Yes, so that part of these are business as usual practices that we have in our organization, and we need to use those to gather the information, the evidence, the data that says whether the required behaviors are actually happening on the job. Yeah, so it's not extra, it's just... It's not, absolutely, it's not extra, it's part of. Perfect, that's a really good insight. Thank you. Sanyam.
Yeah, I just wanted to also say that what Heather said is so important because, you know, people don't think of it to be then as an added burden of a new process because there's already so much going on in, you know, in a particular system. One more thing I would like to say is that when you're identifying level 3 behaviors, don't give it to them. Don't give them the solution. Let them think about it. You can always give them examples. You can help them. You know, you can help to guide them, but do not give them solutions. So for example, what we did is that we basically took the senior leadership of 12 people, we divided them into 2 teams, and they basically came up with their own behaviors after they understood what Kirkpatrick was actually all about. So I think it's important to not give them the behavior, but it should come introspectively from them, just like you would do coaching. Okay, you would want your coaches to come up with the solutions, and you wouldn't want to give them the solutions.
So you're asking your business and organizational colleagues to identify the behaviors they want happening on the job, and they are the best people actually to tell you whether those behaviors are happening or not.
Yeah, and how do they see success? You know, because to me is different to them. And what we need to understand is we need to align ourselves as to how they see success. So I think that's important.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. Now we're shortly going to come to the end of the webinar. So I just really I'm just going to ask you top of mind one thing. Heather, I'll ask to start with you. What would be one key learning that you've taken from attending the bronze certification program, and in your own case, the silver certification program? So what's one key learning for you?
Ooh, one key thing. Probably the realization that if you can show value to the business cannot argue with you. Like, you know, every time I go back now, it's like if I can show them how this can impact on those top level things, they will say, yes, you can have this money. Yes, you can take this timer out of production to take these people or whatever it is. So yeah, you just get more wins.
You get more wins. Fantastic. Thank you. CP, can I put you on the spot, please? One key learning for you.
Yeah, for me, I think it's, to me, it's an ongoing conversation. What I really picked up after completing my bronze and recently, a few months back, silver, is really to reinforce the kind of language that we want to speak, that we can use with the business, using the model, and always begin with the end in mind, and helping the business translate their business goals into behaviors, and then from behaviors into kind of knowledge that they want transferred, and then how can we then make the learning activities meaningful for the transfer to take place. So it's an ongoing conversation, not as easy as what it seems. And that's why I encourage those who have not done it to really do it and understand how how useful the language and the terms are used in the model.
Fantastic, thank you. Erika, now you're relatively new to Kirkpatrick, so what's one key learning for you so far?
For me, the aligning to level for true results. All levels are of course important, but that is the key for me, key takeaway. In fact, I started to play a game at work and started to ask people, why do we exist? Why does the organization exist?
Yeah, to the end.
What results I'm getting. So I love the process.
Fantastic. And Sanyam, one thought from you on the key learning.
I think three of the panelists have mentioned the key learnings of Kirkpatrick, but I just want to say that one of the biggest learnings for me was that once your organization sees you in the right light because of Kirkpatrick, the ancillary effects of that particular site is phenomenal, because everything else around you just starts to fall in place and your efforts are reduced considerably in taking care of unnecessary things which, you know, basically take up most of our time. So I think that's one of the biggest learnings for me, you know, where people changed their lenses when it came to Kirkpatrick. So I think that's something amazing that Kirkpatrick did for me.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, look, all of you, thank you for sharing your insights and responding to those questions today. We really do appreciate all of you taking the time to share your insights with the Kirkpatrick community. So from Mark, Melanie and myself, we are really appreciative of you being able to spend that time with us today. So Erika, CP, Heather, Sanyam, thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
My pleasure, thank you. Okay, so let's just talk about what's going to be happening next. So the panel discussion, I hope, is giving you a taste of what we cover in the Kirkpatrick certification programs. We have a program starting on 29 September, which is live and online, and it is timed for the Asia Pacific region. So it's not too early in the morning if you're in India, and it's not too late in the day if you are in the Pacific or in New Zealand and Australia. So we would encourage you to have a look at that if you are interested. And there's a link at the bottom of the page. If that link for whatever reason doesn't work, we'll be sending the link out to you. When we send a copy of the recording of this program. Now, in that program, you've heard us mention Jim Kirkpatrick. And Dr. Jim Kirkpatrick, who's the senior consultant with Kirkpatrick Partners, he is joining us as a special guest in the 5th session of the program, so the final session on October the 15th. Also, you've heard us mention that there's a silver program as well. And the silver program is where we share with you the knowledge and skills to put together an evaluation report. So not just to create the value by working with your business partners, but actually to demonstrate that value in terms of this is what we have achieved at the 4 levels. And that program is commencing 25th November, and that's over 3 sessions. And CP and Heather, who you have heard from today, have been part of that silver journey. And Heather is silver certified. Now, we've been very conscious of what's been happening with the COVID situation, and the way that we've decided to contribute back to the learning and development community is that we've wanted to encourage people to go beyond bronze and take the silver program. So we have places available on the silver program. If you attend the bronze program commencing 29 September, which is live from New Zealand and India, if you attend that program, you can register and attend our silver program commencing 25 November. You can attend silver for free. Now, we have a number of limited spaces on that, But if you are interested in attending the bronze program, bear in mind that option to attend silver for free is available if you attend the bronze program commencing 29 September. So it's coming up to the hour. So what we'd like you to do in chat, if you've got time, how have you found today? How do you feel about it? What's the key learning of this webinar been for you? And what have you particularly liked? So just type away any of those thoughts in chat, how you feel about today, your key learning, or what you particularly liked. And we'll just give you a minute or so to do that. Jan, good to see that it's been a great reminder to you of the Kirkpatrick model. Nice to see that you're on the line.
So we would also like to encourage you, those of you who are still around, it is now also an opportunity if you want to put on your video, unmute yourself, and actually also say a couple of words or ask any other questions over the audio. So do feel free to now switch your videos back on. If you do want to say hi or have a specific question for us or one of the panelists, you can of course also keep using the chat.
Okay, and Melanie, I think we have one more slide which gives you our contact details. So if you do want to contact us or if you have any questions, Mark and I are at info@gmdpartnerships.co.nz, and Melanie is at info@thelearninggym.co. So we'll send those contact details out with the recording, but please get in touch if you've got any questions or if you think we may be able to help you. So I guess formally from this part of the webinar, we're certainly staying on to answer any questions you may have, but from myself and on behalf of Mark and Melanie, thank you so much for joining us today.
And with that, I will stop the recording as well. And we will send the recording to everyone who participated today.
Great. Now, does anyone have any questions? Does anyone want to open up their mic and ask any questions?
Hey Mark, I'm Rajan here from India, and if you don't mind, I still had a question by the time David announced that we're going to close. So Mark, I am running a year-long capability development project. I just started the journey. We just have done the first assessments, and now we are in the process of doing 9 bucks. What would be your suggestion in terms of showing business leaders the impact of all that we are trying to do in terms of capability development?
Well, I'll go first. That's a big question.
And I'll also evaluation, Mark.
I'll get others to chip in here too. Rajan, has the organisation have you already aligned it to the end in mind, what the business is trying to achieve? Has the program actually already got that alignment, or have we just developed a program that we're rolling out?
So there are 2 answers to this. Number one, Mark, it came from global. So I work with an organization called Abbott. So it was a global endeavor to say, hey, we need to run a capability we need to run the capability frameworks, and then we need to ensure that people move from where they are to the next level. And I think which is a great outcome that we are looking at. However, how do we ensure that we are moving in the right direction was actually my question. Yes, business leaders are aligned to the entire project.
Okay. I'd be quite easy for me to keep talking, so I won't. I'm going to open this up to the panelists we've still got on. And what would you guys say? So it's almost as though we've got a a forced program capability with potentially good outcomes, how would you go about demonstrating the value at this point?
Yeah, true.
Who's
and
willing
it's a year long, and it's a year